It's The Journey with drug and alcohol attorney Mark G. Astor.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another live edition of The Journey, Friday at 5 o'clock. You should be able to watch us on Facebook Live, and also you'll find the show on our Drug and Alcohol Attorneys Facebook page, and also on the drugandanalcoholattorneys.com page. So I'm really excited to have a very special guest on our show, and it's somewhat timely in light of the fact that, you know, our locally here we've been talking about the whole sex trafficking and human trafficking, and, you know, the connection to the arrests of Robert Kraft and other individuals who were apparently allegedly caught at a facility up in Jupiter where there was young ladies performing sex acts, and there's some allegation that perhaps they were brought in from other countries. So, Phuni, thank you for coming on the show.
It's actually Phuni.
Phuni. I misspelled it. All right. So, the reason I wanted to have you on the show, and I found this online, so I'm going to just sort of, this is the summary of what's been going on, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes. So basically, you grew up in Tibet, and you came here when you were 16 years of age. You were brought here actually by, I guess, somebody who purported to be a man of the cloth, right? And basically for 5 years you worked as a domestic servant and a sex slave in this gentleman's home. And you went to school, you ran track, went to Sunday church services, and I guess at some point, I guess, as they say, the chickens came home to roost, and he was arrested. And I think it developed after that. I think two of your cousins had also been trafficked to the United States. So you were brought here as part of a sort of a human trafficking ring. And you've got an amazing story. I know you've been on Oprah and talked about it. And my understanding is, are you writing a book? Is there you'll be doing a book? About?
Not in near future.
So we've got to get you to write a book. But I mean, you have an amazing story, and I feel so blessed to have you on the show. I mean, this is such your story is amazing, and I'm very grateful and humbled and honored that you would come on here and share it with us. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're an amazing woman. The fact that you're actually here with us really is just a sort of a story of courage and strength. So let's sort of get into it, because I know that you grew up in Tibet, right? So
technically, I grew up in India. It's known as India today because the place where I was born is called Ladakh. It's the state of Jammu and Kashmir in India. There's a current, there's a lot of trouble things going on there, unfortunately. So it's a old Buddhist kingdom. Once it belonged to Tibet. It's 12 to 19,000 feet high in the Himalayas, and the tip of the northern borders Pakistan in India. My parents were nomads from Tibet. Under the Chinese occupation, my parents followed His Holiness the Dalai Lama into the exile, and that was a very easy for them to cross as a nomads in that region. That's where they spend a lot of time in Changtang. And I was born in Leh Ladakh, outside of the city, in Chaklamsor, and the place called Lamdu. There's a school there, and literally in the field, I took my father back after 30 years later, asked him where was I born, and he literally pointed a field. That's the field where you were born, in a tent. My father delivered to all of us. We are 6 siblings today, and eventually they were relocated in southern India, where many of the Tibetans today settle as a Tibetan refugee settlements. So that's how I ended up coming from north to the south. And yes, life was very difficult for our parents because they were nomads. Their lifestyle as a nomadic people had to be stopped, moving into the exile, and eventually, they settled and did a farming in the Tibetan refugee camp.
All right, so describe. I mean, we sort of in the news we hear the word refugee used. tell us what life was like for you. I mean, you're living as a refugee. I mean, you've had to relocate. So tell us about that. You've got, is it five siblings or six of you, parents? I mean, tell me about that. What was it like?
So life, sometimes I feel like a refugees is overused in our community today. We consider more as the community is considered more as a settlement. But when we first arrived to India, there's literally, it was a forest, like a jungle, a land that was not a really good fertile land that used by Indians. So the Indian government was so kind enough to give Tibetans a home when they fled Tibet into India. And it was literally forest my parents cut, like all the people who arrived there in early 70s cut all these, forests, sort of make a space for the land. And they lived in tent initially, and then they lived in straw house, eventually a concrete government cement block, small buildings. Today, Tibetans, through the help of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the community all over the world who have supported Tibetans, status and what's happening inside Tibet by the Chinese invasion, live very thriving community. We look at Jewish community as a role model to continue to preserve our heritage and our faith, even in a community, in exile. So, growing up as a kid, obviously we barely had maybe one or two shoes. We're lucky if, we carried our, school bag on a backpack and walked to 8-9 miles,
Every day you walked 8 or 9 miles to go to school?
8 and 9 miles to go to school, but not even normal road. We would go into fields, and then you help your parents, at home and chores. I literally ran to school every single day, and I was grateful if I got on time. But that was a very, common to all the kids. You do help your parents, and then you run to school, literally. Eventually, I was lucky. My father brought me a used bicycle, so I could bicycle to school. That was like a really, really big deal. I never forget that time that I learned to bike through the pedal, instead of riding on the top because I was too small. So I could just pedal between, and that's how I learned to ride bicycle.
So let me interrupt you just for a second. So tell us about like your home, because you said you started off in a tent, then you had a concrete house. So I mean how you got
basic pots and pans. We slept on the floor, and it's all dirt floor, and we will put cow dungs to keep the bugs and to keep the dirt rising up. All the extras besides the cement block, if there are extra house that's made by us would be mud, bamboo with the mud put on the top during the monsoons and stuff. There would be the hail rains and stuff. We will hide under the beds. Life was really hard. My parents who didn't speak any Hindi, that's the language in India, let alone local language. So many Tibetans, when they first arrived to India, because of the climate change from high up in Himalayas to southern India, which is 80-90 degrees in summer, and even in winter it will be at least 60-70 degrees. So people had really tough time adjusting.
Did you have electricity and running water and things like that?
No, not till very much later. No electricity. We lived on a tiny kerosene. I don't know what you call it. Those, like today people get fancy, they put that in there.
Like a kerosene lamp?
Yeah, a kerosene lamp. And you're lucky if you have one lamp for the whole family. So grew up really, compared to how we live in the West, it's very poor, but yet they have so much peace and spirituality, and believe that someday we will return to Tibet. That's the sort of the hope that my parents had, and they were so grateful. They were alive, they were able to get out, yet they had so much mixed feeling of leaving everybody of their heritage and their lifestyle. It was really, really difficult for especially for my mom. she had to leave behind her mother and her sibling just to escape, because if she escaped together, Chinese will find them. So she really escaped in the middle of the night, leaving some sibling and her mom, so she could escape and take her 2 kids. And this was planned by my father and his uncle to try to get safe people out of Tibet.
Well, so I know at some point you ended up coming to America.
Yes.
So tell us how that happened. Because you didn't jump on a Pan Am flight, right? I mean, it was it's a story in and of itself, and that's really sort of the crux of what we want to talk about. I don't need the details, but obviously.
Of course. So this was obviously never imagined for my family or for me to ever come to US. At that point, we don't even have sophisticated knowledge of what US is and where it is in the world and so forth. My sister, for not having a job, she ended up going to the place where I was born in Ladakh, because that is the place that she knew there would be relatives there. And she went there as looking for work as a tourist guide, and she ended up meeting the minister, the Unitarian minister, who was traveling. I don't know how he ended up in Ladakh, but he was traveling in India in a search of helping set up health clinics through the congregations that they were doing some kind of outreach support to poor areas in different parts of India. And he ended up in Ladakh, and he met my sister because she was the tour guide. And they exchanged, contacts and information, and then they started to correspond with each other. And that's how he ended up staying in touch with my sister and coming to visit us in the Tibetan settlement in India, in Mungot. That's where I grew up. And after maybe first or second visit, he told my family that I was very smart and very, it would be such a waste for me to stay in this, settlement and refugee. And
how old are you at this point?
I think around probably 11, 12, when I first met him, when he came to the Tibetan refugee camp in Mungot. He came at least, in my recollection, 2 or 3 times. And in that process, he got to know my family and he knew us. And he eventually made a sort of establishment with my family and my brother-in-law and the family, the community heads and so forth, that, obviously, I don't think our village has ever seen a white man before,
Okay, so this was a white man from the United States who was coming to the village?
Yeah, he came to Mungot, and that's how he convinced and told my family that it would be such a good for my future to be educated. I don't know what other words he's used. The idea that he would just take care of me, and he would send me to school, and he would give this opportunity for me to be educated in the West. My parents don't care. I mean, they are illiterate, and they're humble, poor, and kind, spiritual people. But they were convinced how important it is, the education is, and that he will give me a chance to help our family with my education. And it will be such a pride and such a wonderful thing for our refugee camp to have someone who will be educated someday.
So his pitch was, let me bring your daughter to America. She'll have a better life. She'll have an education. And for your parents, who were uneducated people, and I mean, you were living on living in such, I don't know. It's almost hard for us as sort of Americans to even think about, envision what you were going through. So for your parents, it must have been like, this must have been, I don't know, like heaven sent, right? Here's a guy that wants to take my daughter and give her a better life.
To be really honest with you, I don't think it's a heaven sent for my parents. I don't think they have any clue what this is like. They were doing it for sake that it's an education, right? But they have no idea what it's like over here. They don't probably never heard of US. They're just like, if you think of very, very humble, a traditional nomad people up in Mongolia or Uzbekistan and who's never seen a television, who's never seen outside of their own, yurt or their own community and their lifestyle, and you tell something about US and you're going to do it. They're just like, they have no clue. But I think my parents felt this man who looked so white, again, there's so much, you know, connotation we can understand white is good in other parts of the world, right? Like he's pure, he's here, he's a minister, he's a religious person, he's want to help us, he wants to educate my child. Can you imagine someone who is so pure and so kind and so decent human being? They wouldn't think anything else. How can they assume anything else? They're so grateful, they were so taken by that he wants to treat me like a daughter and he wants to educate and take care of me and take it to US. It just seems so unbelievable.
Was he speaking to other families in the village? Was he just yours?
No, yeah, just really honed into me and my family. And I think he realized that, we were just simple, very, simple people, and we are trusting, and we are, Buddhist, and we're kind, and we just, we don't have any other way of thinking that someone will ever hurt another little girl or another being and exploit them and do bad things to them. Maybe, there's a whole theory about Tibet. If Tibet was open and was very sophisticated, China would not have ever taken over, or, people, we're just really, just sort of believe in this sort of goodness and do, a very spiritual people. And my mother, but nevertheless, my mother, I remember second trip, he came to do this continuous convincing. He tried to go over to my mother to give hug like in a Western way, and my mother asked him not to come close to her, and she didn't want him to have any contact. And this was something really against my mom. My mom didn't want me to go, and she didn't have a choice. No one listened to her.
So how'd you end up coming? I mean, I know there was another family member that got involved, right?
No, that's later. So I ended up coming here because he convinced my brother-in-law.
Right.
My brother-in-law was a fairly well-known chef in a very high-end hotel in Bombay, and he knew what it means to come to US and so forth. And eventually my parents, like my father, gave in and really was trying to do the right thing. And I know before he passed away, all these years that he's lived, I think he's carried that guilt and this burden that he had, sent me unknowingly.
So your brother-in-law basically intervened. He, for lack of a better word, sort of worked on your parents, and eventually they said, okay, we'll let her go.
Yeah, my dad said, okay. I don't think my mother ever was consulted. It was against her wish. And I was sent to Bombay, and before I left, my brother-in-law took me to salon. I had a very, very long hair. He cut my hair. I've never gone out of my village. I've never even gone to a second town, a city which I've been maybe once or twice in my life. So for me to go to Bombay or Delhi for visa and come to US was like a whirlwind. I had no idea, and just imagining 15 years old.
It had to be complete culture shock for you. I mean, it's like another planet.
I think I was like a zombie most of the time. I think I was so stunned and shocked and scared, like to know what's going to happen, where I'm going. And I truly believe my time at the airport to come to US and stuff, I feel like my parents were guiding me to be in the right. Even though I did read English, spoke very little because we didn't speak English. Even the schools are taught in English medium, but we didn't speak English fluently. So idea of just being in an airport by yourself and waiting and going to these places, I just felt like I was just guided by my parents.
So how old were you when you finally came over?
I was 15.
Okay, and where did you go to live?
So I went to live at his farm in Northborough, Massachusetts. It's about 40 minutes from Boston Logan Airport. And I came by myself. It was unbelievable. I just, as a grown woman today, look back to my story. I've always had this detachment to feel so much empathy and compassion for this little girl who had no idea, who was sent here sort of against her wishes and her mother's wishes by family members, as well as by sort of coercion to family member to send me to this country. And this is oftentimes what I understand now, being involved and understand human trafficking, that it doesn't happen such a clean cut. There's a lot of people who are involved in perpetuating and creating the story and making it look like this is a legit and this is a good thing for the survivor or the person who are brought into this.
Right. So I know that you came here, you were going to school, and I'm sure to the outside world it looked like, everything was hunky-dory, but that wasn't the case, right?
No, I think he did such a good job being a minister of two congregation church, and he congregate churches, and he has such a credibility, and he was, well known in the community. He sent me to school every day, and it looked really good. And I went to school. I did my best. I very isolated and very scared, and so I was not like a normal kid. If I was normal kid, I wouldn't be where I was. And I was a good girl. I was kept quiet and just keep thinking that this was, I'm going to wake up every night and this will be it's happening in a dream. This is a nightmare, a dream of a nightmare that is going to stop. I stayed at school longest I could. Eventually, when I figured out, I did a cross country and I did a track, so I could stay longest I can. But the outside world, because it looked like poor refugee girl, and he's helping. He's doing all this. At the time he was married, he also had his second wife had a daughter too. So this is why it was so unbelievable that I felt eventually the second wife knew what was going on, and she obviously left him and took her daughter, and I was left there with him.
Right. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the intimate details. I don't think anybody needs to know that, but what can you share with us? I don't need all the details, but I mean, because he was basically using you as a housekeeper and sex slave, right? I mean, for lack of a better word.
Well, yeah, he made it seem like I was going to school. He was, feeding me. Therefore, everything that needs to be done, cooking, cleaning, the yard work, the farm, whatever grass, whatever needed, that, everything, was for him, like, you're here and I'm feeding you. Therefore, you have to do all this stuff.
Right. You should be grateful, right? I mean...
Of course.
So were you cut off from your family?
I mean, it's cut off because we don't have a television, we don't have a phone, I could barely send letters. Again, if I say anything in letters, he was very good at, early on, making sure that no one will believe me. And, I was totally mentally, psychologically, manipulated and distracted. I just, be scared. Maybe you tell anyone, first of all, you're going to go to jail and your family's going to go to jail and you'll never see your family.
Right. You had no reason to believe it wasn't true. I mean...
no one will believe you anywhere. But
right.
I think what is really important in this, my experience, is that I wished when I was there, he made it look so good. He had congregation people come to home for, I don't know, I can't remember, but a carol or music, or people will come. Everybody thought, wow, how lucky she is. The minister is so kind to help you, and it made it look so real. And I kept thinking, why can't someone see this is a really highly unusual and odd that, his wife has left. How come it's normal for a little girl, to be with this man, old man here? How is it? Why don't someone talk to me? Someone try to, build a trust with me and see, how am I doing?
It's amazing. Here he is. He's portraying himself as a man of God, and behind closed doors, he's the devil incarnate. You know what I mean? It's shocking. I know there was a point in time where things, from what I understand, there was an issue, or there was a time where he tried to get, there was something to do with your cousins, trying to traffic your cousins too.
Yep. So eventually, after 5.5, 6 years, I ended up meeting my late husband, and that's how I was able to escape. Able to get married, and he realized that he can't continue abusing me. I have a person, and I'm trying to run away because my school is done. So I graduated. I no longer, I'm old enough. So I don't know how he contacted, and maybe he made some contacts when he was visiting us all those years in the village with my cousins. So I found out literally a week before, when my cousins arrived here, they were coming here. This is my cousin who is my age and younger, two girls. So until then, I have never uttered a word about what happened to me, even not with my late husband.
So was the minister, was he the one that was responsible for bringing your cousins over here?
Oh yeah, he brought them. He's the one who brought those two cousins. So when week before this happened, I started to have nightmares, and all this stuff was going on in my head and stuff. And then I knew that when they get here, this is going to happen to them, or it already happened to them. And he somehow convinced them to bring them here and offer the same kind of stuff to their family and to them. So after, I think maybe a month or two later, the cousins tried to reach out to me, but he told them and never to talk to me. And I was a bad person. I was a liar, never to listen to me, and and so forth. And when they called me, I was just so scared to, someday something's gonna happen. And I was having very tough time with my husband.
Where were your cousins brought to? Same place you were?
On his farm.
Wow.
They came, and when they called me and said this was happening to them, the older cousin reached out to me, and she asked for help. And so I went to my husband, and I said, my cousins are in trouble, and he's hurting them, and we need to help. And eventually we were able to help them. And then one day my husband turned around, looked at me, and said, do you have something to tell me? And we were able to help them. And
how old were you at this point? Because you came here, what, 16? You said it was 5 or 6 years, so you had to be in your early 20s?
Yep. So after that, he was traveling to another, I believe in Ecuador or somewhere. And while he was traveling, their girls were able to reach out to me, older one. And that's how there was some member of church who's been suspecting that something weird is going on this farm with all these girls. Eventually, one of them reached out to us. And then, I said, yes, my cousins are going through a tough time. He's hurting them. And then I came forward with my story. I eventually told my husband. And then we went to the police, and he was still away at that time. And then police raided his home and found a lot of images of photographs of a lot of little young girls from all over the world. So it's just not me and my girls. He traveled to many South America, Central America, and Southeast Asia, where there's a lot of young girls, that whether he was paying for it or whether he's
How many girls do we think that he was potentially responsible for trafficking?
Well, for sure, he brought 3 of us here, but overseas when he traveled, he had a lot of encounters with young women. They were not able to come to, because he already had 2 girls and happened to me. we know that for sure that he was luring or doing a lot of stuff over there, and that's what police found. Anyway, so eventually we went to the police, and he only got 3 years in prison with my testimony, and 10 years probation, and they took his passport for 10 years and booked.
Is he still alive? Do we know?
I believe he's still alive. He's obviously been defrosted from Unitarian Universalist Church, so I don't know if he's practicing or not.
It seems shocking. He should get 3 years in prison, and you spend 5 or 6 years in hell. I mean, basically, it's frankly shocking.
Yeah, but he ruined at least 3 people's life, and who knows how many other young women that he has exploited and hurt them, and God knows. But beyond that, I think it says a lot about our community and how we understand and value human life. Doesn't look all, I imagine if he had helped a young white female and kept it in his farm and doing this, I wonder if people suspect, like, why is he doing that? It's because we are brown and we are refugees, or we are poor. Therefore, people feel, oh, he's so kind, he's so good, he's helping them, poor, refugee kids. I'm just personally trying to understand, how that I was never reach out to people to say, like, are you okay? What's going on? I don't know. I keep longing for someone to, someone will see through, or someone will suspect that it's really odd that this man is traveling all the time and he's only helping these girls. Why is he not bringing boys? Why is he not helping, I don't know, kids over here?
And why are they living with him? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's very strange.
50 years old with the little girls. I mean, like, why can't you help, big brothers and sisters and help these kids? And I don't know, just seemed really out of shocking that he can house, and by himself I don't trust. I don't even put pictures of my children on the internet, let alone trust anyone out there who can just think that they can help someone.
So I know that you got married. Your husband was Wang Chuk. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
And so are you, I know that you live in Boston. You're living in Boston now, right? Is that?
I mean, I'm living outside of Boston.
Right. So you settled down with Wang Chuk, right? And so how was life after that?
My husband, Wang Chuk Daja Meston, was really, I truly believe he was an angel sent to me. It was our fate. He grew up, he's a Jewish American. He grew up in a monastery in Nepal, and we met here by accident in a Buddhist teaching, and he was there. He was my teacher. He was my savior. He was my partner. He was my soulmate. He has healed me in ways that I could ever imagine from this torture and this torment and years of living in sort of completely isolated. Did not believe that I could ever be whole again, that I could ever be free from the nightmares and the mental torment that I suffered. Keep thinking it was my fault, or it was my karma, or you can just go on and on. But I think meeting someone who's lived a very different life, who had so much compassion and empathy and wanting to know the truth of human life, or what we're trying to do, had really helped me to sort of see the strength and the resilience in human survivor. I think knowing how Daja grew up as a little boy in a monastery, without his parents, with a Tibetan family first, and then in a monastery, and not knowing who he was, who he belonged to. And he didn't even know he was Jewish. So he didn't know where his roots are till adult life. So I truly feel that we were meant to be together to really heal and help each other. So I wouldn't be where I am and have this kind of positivity and understanding of, suffering. No matter how much you suffering is part of life, and the way you use your suffering to understand and to move forward, right? Given this human life, this precious human life, all of us, that we have this life. And it's easy to stay in your pain and your suffering and find many people to blame, because obviously you don't do it. Like in my case, I didn't ask to come to US, and I didn't ask to do this happen to me because of this sick man, who's lived this disguised life. I still have a lot of compassion. I hope he's getting help and he's healed and able to do good in life again. But nevertheless, I can't, sit here and feel bad for myself, and think that, life is, that's it. There's so much good in life, and all of us have responsibility to put forward what we think is our contribution. Everybody has responsibility to contribute, despite what our, narrative is, what our past history is. But I just feel at this point in my life that one can feel really pessimist about what's happening with political and social and inequality and women's rights and all of this stuff. But all of us have somehow have to rise up and really put forward what we feel is our capability and our contribution. Otherwise, we're gonna give our children to say that, oh, there's nothing you can do. One cannot make any difference. And I don't believe that.
I'm almost speechless. For a lawyer to be speechless is, you did good. So I want to know, I know that you were on the Oprah show. How'd you end up going on Oprah's show?
Oprah, I think during sort of the trafficking was getting a lot of sort of media and social awareness of what was happening. And Oprah obviously shared a lot about her own experience, and somehow contacted the local Boston area to see if there was any survivors who are willing to speak about their experience. And so there was a nonprofit who reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested. And we said, no, we don't want to do that. Like, no. And then eventually they're convinced and said that because you have years of healing and have a time distant, you might able to speak in a way that survivors today who are still going through and feel that I had a little bit of maturity and I had a little bit of a time that helped me to really heal, and I have done a lot of healing myself, and that's how we ended up being in Oprah. Even then, I just feel, as I mentioned yesterday, I think it is very difficult for survivors to share their story. What I think media and a lot of outlets don't understand in the trauma, the re-traumatization of sharing the story is really a very difficult one for a lot of us who go out there and share their story. Our hope is we're sharing it because we want people to know the idea. When you're a survivor of anything, people see us as the only victim. They don't realize how important it is that all of us find a way to be free from victimhood and to realize that that is part of our history, but that's not all who we are. And we are so eager to be here to be part of that conversation when trafficking happens. What other governmental and non-governmental, as a community as a whole, how important it is that we all play a role to understand, go beyond. It's not just happening here, right? So the complacent that we all play into, unconscious complacency that we have in this society sometimes, whether it's politics or anything, we think, oh, human trafficking, oh, this happened in Florida, wow, now there's a whole another new narrative. But in the past, people think trafficking happens outside,
Right, in faraway places.
faraway places.
Doesn't
and
happen
not
here.
Imagine that the Unitarian minister will be doing something like that, because we put so much faith in, people in the cloth, the man of a God. I mean, now we know so much. Today we're so lucky to able to get so much more information and able to get these people really bring to sort of justice, so to speak. But again, as a parent, as a teachers, as a lawmakers, as a government workers, we all have to be alert. When I see a poster in an airport that says, if you see something, slavery still exists, but in U.S. sometimes we don't want to really believe that. It happens right here in our own neighborhood. Because one huge, what do you call it? It has to hit the news to make a really big thing.
Otherwise, people think it's not happening. So I read somewhere. Are you involved with is it a not-for-profit that talks about this stuff and works with this stuff?
In the past, not currently.
Okay.
I helped as a small nonprofit, and then that dissolved. And I helped the state local government to have an anti-trafficking law. I've spoken and a victims' rights advocate whenever there's an opportunity that I feel that what happened to me could benefit survivors as well as people to understand, instead of having a taboo, like being a survivor today, even in my community, when this happened to me, so many people were shamed and didn't know what to say, because here, Tibetans, they are Buddhists, they are Dalai Lama, they don't think of survivors of human trafficking, they don't think about sexual abuse, right? So I had to go through a lot, even within my community, for people to understand that, there's no one is ill from any kind of this kind of stuff. We are all part of this, world, and it could happen to anyone.
Hey, listen, I mean, we're all part of the solution. Sometimes we are our brother and sister's keeper, and if we see something, we need to tell somebody, call the police, let the FBI know, or whatever. I mean, let somebody know that, we think this might be going on, because apparently, as we've seen, here in Palm Beach County, an affluent community, it's going on right in front of, on our doorstep here with these, I don't know, for lack of a week, when I was a prosecutor, we used to call them rub and tug places, right? I mean, people forget that the girls that are working there, I mean, there's something going on there. So I'm so flattered or humbled or honored that you would come on and share this story. I really, I'd heard so much about you from Audra. I know that you know my partner Audra, and she's been talking about you for so long, and just to hear you share your story, I mean, it's really amazing, and you're amazing.
Well, I'm honored and given this opportunity. I know I read about your work. What you're doing is unbelievable.
Thank you.
I don't know, honestly, any law firm that is doing what you're doing. I think there is such a huge need, and for people who are going through, whether it's human trafficking or domestic violence or substance abuse, I think in this society, I feel if you don't fit into the American, the hard work, the high achiever, the go-getter, so many people fall into cracks. I'm not talking about just immigrants who come in this country, the normal people who are born and raised here. I think we need to really be looking inwardly to realize that to be, to have a humanity, to respect people, everybody comes in a different forms, and to have a compassion and empathy in every form, every being who's out there, of course, wants to be so-called go-getter or successful or wants to do that. But not everybody's path is one straight narrow. Everybody has different life experience, different family circumstances. We are is we need, I think what I'm trying to say here is we need to have a more compassion and empathetic society, and not to put aside people who don't belong in this other category. And this was one of the things that my husband was struggling a lot, is that he came from other parts of the world. He came here and he couldn't function like the way we function here. I think many of us function like robots in this country. We don't have time to, spend time with our families. We don't have time to be kind and be going out of the way to do something for someone else, because we are too busy able to pay our bills and live in this, sort of a robotic,
the bubble, I call it.
Society. It's too much. And I think what you're doing is so, I want to say you're doing a Buddhist work, you're doing a Christian work, you're doing a, Jewish mitzvah work, whatever you're doing, all of this stuff. I'm sure in the Islamic faith, they have a wonderful, word that describes people who are doing a, social work. That's what you're doing is social work. So I'm so grateful for your and do what you do.
Thank you.
There's such a huge need, and
thank you. All right, I'm gonna sign off. Don't go anywhere yet, though. Okay, so I can say thank you again. So, guys and girls, wow, tell me that wasn't one of the best shows we've done yet. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to post. Oh, amazing! My phone always goes off right in the middle of a sign off. If you have any questions or comments, and I think we're doing question of the week, so I would encourage you to message me or post something and ask a question about the work we do. You should be able to see this on our drugandalcoholattorneys.com website. We're on the Drug and Alcohol Attorneys Facebook page, my Mark GS, the personal page. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and actually also go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell button, right? I'm getting good at this, Jay, right? So what happens when you watch a lot of YouTube? So let us know what we can do to help you. If you need any information about the work we do, Mark at drugandalcoholattorneys.com, or call us 561-419-6095. We take calls 24/7, so if I'm not asleep, I'll more than likely take your call. And look forward to seeing you on our next show. Remember, Friday, 5 o'clock is when we air. Thank you very much for tuning into this edition of The Journey Live. We clear, Jay? Oh, yes, Phuni, I got to say goodbye to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
At some point,
thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
Jay, he's amazing, right? I don't know how he sets this all up. He comes to my office. I know it looks like a studio, but actually he comes to my office every week. He sets this up. And
he has to listen to people like me all the time. I feel bad for him.
He's my technology guy. He's going to help me update my computer a little bit because something's not working. But at some point, Audra and I are going to come to Boston, and I'd love to meet you in person. And you're really a truly amazing, inspirational woman.
Please, no. I think thank you for doing what you do. Seriously, really, same here. And Audra is very lucky. She's a very lucky woman.
Actually, I think I'm lucky.
Yeah, she's
quite amazing.
Really,
you're right. My mother tells me all the time I was lucky to meet her. Jewish mothers, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Really, both of you. I look forward to continuing conversation with you.
Thank you. Good to see you and meet you finally.
Yep. Take care.
You too. Yep. Bye-bye.